It's been nearly 3.5 years since Sea of Stars was introduced to the world with its mega successful Kickstarter. Since then, the Messenger alumni Sabotage Studio has poured blood, sweat, and tears into the making of the game while being featured on the cover of Game Informer magazine, the recent making of documentary by The Escapists, and they've gotten more and more attention after featuring demos on its various platforms. And now the wait is finally over. With this highly anticipated indie JRPG and Chrono Trigger inspired adventure available now on all major platforms and even on Game Pass and PlayStation Plus Extra as Day 1 editions, you are going to want to know if it's actually any good. Luckily, I got a chance to develop some early impressions after playing through the first 4 or so hours, so whether you've been eagerly waiting for it or just hearing about it now and trying to find out what the hype is all about, I got you covered with my mostly spoiler-free first impressions. I've been waiting a long time for this and couldn't wait to talk about it, so subscribe to keep an eye out for my more complete review when I'm able to finish a playthrough at a later date. Okay, real quick, let's talk about what I will and will not be spoiling. I won't be showing any footage from the launch trailer, which included a character reveal that some people have been avoiding. I will be lightly touching on the broad strokes of the story beats in the early portions of the game, most of which has already been revealed by the team. I'll be showing off some of the areas and lesser enemy encounters you'll see in the first few hours of the game, and I may show you and talk about a few early boss fights and character conversations, but these have all been previously shown in promo material, and I'll even stay fairly vague on the specifics of all these things to leave much of the surprises for you to experience it when you play it yourself. If you've been following this game for a while and seen most of the trailers, following the devs on Twitter, seeing what they're posting, you're probably safe. Though if you are especially sensitive to spoilers, you might want to turn away anyway. Okay, with that out of the way, we'll get started, and I won't keep you waiting any longer. It's really friggin' good, and well worth the long wait if you've been following this game since its Kickstarter like me. So let's get right into the details. The game opens up much like the demo, selecting either Valere or Zale as your party lead before setting the stage for an epic story. After a brief introduction to Valere and Zale, a few simple combat encounters, and traversal, we are sent back in time to give more background on the world, story, and the development of our heroes as they come of age and train as Solstice warriors until they are ready to defend the world against its monsters and demons. As you can imagine, this is your standard mandatory RPG tutorial opening. This section makes much of what I consider tutorial part 1 for the game. It leans heavy on story and text, and it makes up much of the first hour of the game. Some may feel it starts a bit slow and want to get to the action, but I found it to be a delightful way to gain attachment to these characters with some of Sabotage's brand of humor shining through at times. And the dev team did a great job of teasing some mysteries for things yet to come. And we quickly get to see some of the game's amazing set pieces and hear a nice range of the brilliant music compositions that fill the game's soundtrack. But more on that later. For this reason, it didn't wear out its welcome for me, and it feels substantial and necessary in terms of story and character development. The first dungeon is fairly straightforward, but it does offer up some elements of exploration, light puzzle solving, and some treasures to loot, along with our first boss encounter. Through this, we get our first real look at the combat system, which in case you haven't tried out the demo for yourself, it has a really clever method of keeping you more engaged even when you're fighting some of the weakest enemies in the game for the umpteenth time. But we'll touch on the specifics of that in more detail a little later in the video. The next section of the game is what I would call Tutorial Part 2. Making up the second hour or so of Sea of Stars, Valere and Zale are now on their way towards the Elder Mist Trials. The final test they must go through before they are officially made Solstice Warriors and they can set out on their journey. On your way, there will be some more opportunities to explore and be rewarded for having a keen eye. There's hints of things you can interact with but don't quite know what they do yet, and an opportunity to fish. Eventually you're taught the boosting mechanic, which introduces a new wrinkle into the combat system by allowing you to imbue extra damage and add magic to your basic attacks. The game then jettisons you into the area featured in the demo. Of course, there's a whole new set of areas that were skipped over during the demo, so we finally get to see the gaps that were left unspoken of, with the first new area being just a really massive location. Moving on to combat, it feels really good, and its unique lock system gives it a puzzle-like mechanic so each encounter has its own flavor, and it keeps you engaged throughout. In many RPGs, I find myself at times getting sick of combat and just wanting to get to the next part of the story or the next boss encounter, often running around enemies just to avoid having to deal with them. I haven't really hit that point yet, and that's a testament to Sea of Stars' clever combat system. You also restore MP gradually by attacking. If you need an immediate boost, there's food items that can do that for you, but it's a nice way to keep combat flowing nicely and not needing to waste time constantly needing to use items just to keep up with the demands of the combat's lock system. And if you want to hear a bit more in-depth explanation of the combat system and just about every other aspect of the game's design philosophy and systems, you can check out my earlier in-development preview video. As far as difficulty goes, in the opening portions of the game, outside of boss encounters, it does feel a tad on the easy side, though the challenge does start to pick up after a few hours. I'm still curious to see how difficult it really gets, as Sabotage had a goal in mind of not requiring players to grind just to stand a chance against the next boss. This might be a sore point for some hardcore RPG fans, but at least in the demo, there was an equipable item to make the game harder, so I'm expecting things like that to appear in the full game later on as well. Early in the game, you are given the Amulet of Storytelling, which makes it easier, at least for those who want it. Bosses we encounter in the early game, which have already been shown in promo materials for the game, include the Boss Slug and the Elder Mist himself, with being the first two tests on what it takes to take on a boss with their own simple but unique systems to strategize around. There's some elements of the game design that will likely go overlooked but should definitely receive a lot of praise. One of them is the resource collection, camping, and cooking systems. These are all quick, snappy systems that work really well. There's no overly long animations wasting time, resources are usually along your main path or only require a slight detour or are just provided as an extra reward for exploration. Fishing is another quick and simple way to build up some resources for your recipes. Fishing spots even log what fish are there and if you've caught them for those who want to check off their completion list. And this is great because it doesn't require you to go out of your way just to get some healing items or feel like you need to hold on to something since they aren't hard to come by. Another really nice system is the KO system. When a character's HP goes to 0, they will get knocked out rather than just being fully out until they are revived with an item. They'll get back up after a few turns as long as someone on your team can survive a few turns, and this duration gets longer each time they are knocked down. This could be looked at as making the game easier, but I think it streamlines combat a lot. This is not an RPG where you constantly have to spend a 15-minute plus boss fight cycling between using reviving items, healing, and attacking, and repeating. This means you don't need to lean on using revive items all the time, and it keeps the flow of combat moving, which in my opinion is a great addition. Immediately the game's environments stand out, with beautiful set pieces, each area feeling like a grand scale, living, breathing world. And the dynamic lighting is a really nice touch that makes you want to stick around in each area to really take in all the little details that have been hand-placed to make the day and night vibe feel distinctly different. From Mooncradle to Zenith Academy to Mountain Trail and beyond, it doesn't take long to just be overwhelmed by the beauty of the world and the incredible sense of verticality some of these areas have, truly making you feel like you're traveling across these valleys and mountains. Even in the opening portions of the game, you are already continuously rewarded for taking a closer look at your environment and exploring a path less traveled, with rewards ranging from defensive equipment, recipes, resources, and valuable items to sell, and it's paced well to the point where you're regularly finding valuable items that feel really good to discover. Unsurprisingly, the music and sound effects are really out of this world good. Eric Brown, also known as Rainbow Dragon Eyes, has really outdone himself as the lead composer. With his experience gained from composing the Messenger soundtrack and now dabbling in a lot of new instruments for the Sea of Stars OST, he's really taken his skills to the next level. Now of course he also has an incredible supporting cast, with Yasunori Mitsuda as the composer of Chrono Trigger's OST adding his own set of tracks. Eric's friend Vincent Jake Jones adding a few tracks of his own and co-writing with Eric on a few tracks, and Reese Miller, who created the acoustic Pirate Band cover tracks, which might be one of the coolest implementations of a jukebox I've seen in a game. Besides that, the game just does a phenomenal job of selecting the right tracks at just the right moment. The tracks themselves seem so in sync with what's happening, it feels like it is even taking an important role in the story itself. And with the dynamic music system that alters each track from day to night, it was an incredible undertaking by the team. But it's really paid off, and personally this has got to be an easy nomination for this year's Best Score and Music at the Game Awards. If you want to find out more about this game's excellent music, then definitely check out the new Audio of Sea of Stars website to read up and listen to some samples. It's a really cool way to get a better understanding of the amazing work that went into it. So there is an elephant in the room that at least a few reviewers have been mentioning, which is the game's typos and grammar. Personally, I haven't noticed any at all, so either I just haven't seen it yet, or my grammar itself is also terrible, which is true. This sort of thing in games when noticeable can be immersion breaking for a hot second, but again, I haven't had this issue myself, but because this is a fairly text-heavy RPG, I could see reviewers seeing this as noteworthy. Though in reality, I don't think anyone is not going to play this because of typos. And while we're on the topic of words, I've also seen some reviews point out lengthy dialogue conversations. While there are some conversations or moments that could feel a bit long, it's far from the worst I've seen. Any longtime RPG fan will be right at home here. The conversations never bored me personally, at least in the opening hours of the game where it is pretty heavy. Alright, long story short, to summarize my own overall impressions and conclusions, with these first few hours of Sea of Stars, I was already hooked into it. I haven't been able to put it down, and I had to peel myself away from it just to put this video together. I really think a lot of longtime fans and followers of Sea of Stars are going to be really happy with it. And it won't be long until they start looking forward to the DLC, which we already know about from the Kickstarter stretch goal. As I record this, I'm just really looking forward to getting back into the game to see what's next. It's just that good and constantly throwing surprises at you. And I know for a fact that I've barely scratched the surface of the game. I'm still waiting for it to open up some more so I have the freedom to sail around to different islands and go on a massive exploration and side quest spree. And I'm curious to see if we'll have some similar intricate side quest events like the Black Omen and other such late game quests from Chrono Trigger. So far the characters are all around very likable, and I can already tell they will certainly be leaving a lasting impression by the conclusion of the story. I'm already really attached to Garl. Man, Garl's the best. I'm still curious if we'll see a messenger style rug pull and this game becomes like a dungeon crawling card battler halfway through, or something ridiculous, but we'll have to see how it plays out. We know Sea of Stars is a prequel, so while nothing immediately stood out to me as a reference to the messenger's world or story as of yet, I expect there's at least a few hidden and some more direct references at some point. But anyway, let's wrap this up and summarize. Game is good, go play it, and again, with it out on all major platforms, there's really no reason not to get your hands on this gem as soon as you can. Whether you grew up on classic Super Nintendo JRPGs it draws inspiration from, or hell, if you just like really well-made games, Sea of Stars can really be enjoyed by anyone and everyone. Now this year has been absolutely stacked for gaming with games like Tears of the Kingdom, Baldur's Gate 3, Pizza Tower, and a lot of underrated smaller indies that I've covered on this channel. And we still have Lies of P, Starfield, Spider-Man 3, and several more highly anticipated games coming very soon. But still, Sea of Stars already shows that Game of the Year potential for me. And if nothing else, it deserves to be part of that discussion, so let's make that happen. Alright, that's it for now. I'm going back to playing some more so I can do a more thorough and complete review later, but for now, thanks for watching. If you want to see more indie gaming content like this, then like the video and subscribe to the channel. I'm slowly pushing my way towards 1,000 subs, and your support really helps me get there. But that's it for me. I'm Colonel Dupes, and I'll catch you in the next one.